Hey everybody, it's Hawk here, and I got a response video to Shad here today. He was talking about how to keep knights relevant, or I suppose he generally just means man-at-arms, not specifically knights, relevant in a fantasy context where you have mages. Generally speaking, I agree with pretty much everything he said. He pretty much covered all of the context which is necessary for this because it's highly magic system dependent. Other than that, I mean, I don't really have any quibbles. However, he did miss, well, he didn't really miss one. There's two things that he kind of missed. One he briefly mentioned and then never went back to, and then the other one he just didn't talk about at all. So, when we're talking about keeping mages effectively from utterly obliterating everything and changing warfare as you know it, they're going to do that just sort of by what they present. Even if they are just, you know, I can make it 15-foot long cone of fire. Like, that changes things. That changes how you storm castles at the minimum. So, the two things he missed is, one, this is the one he mentioned briefly, is that you have mages fight mages. Well, in the book series Malazan Book of the Fallen, there's a lot that goes on in this book series, by the way. This is the one that really always stuck with me, was that there were two armies. The armies were fairly conventional looking, but they both had mages in them, and mages were very important. Because the mages stopped the other mage from killing everyone else in the army. That is 98% of what they were doing on the battlefield, was stopping the other guy from using Cloud Kill on your army. Now, of course, you're trying to use Cloud Kill, I'm just using a D&D spell here that we all know, on the other army. But really, you're just trying to stop that guy from getting into your army, but you need to keep attacking because otherwise he can focus entirely on attacking without bothering to defend you. This is sort of like what happens in the inheritance cycle, though on a much more direct line, because these guys are in the middle of a unit, and they're keeping that unit directly safe, as well as the whole army. Because if you don't have them, your entire army gets wiped out because some dude will just rip open a rift to the, you know, realm of death or something, and then just everyone dies as a whole lot of horrific energies come leaking out and blow through everything. That's the easy one. Now, Shad said, you know, you have mages fight mages, and that's kind of what's going on here, but that one seemed more of for basic plot reasons, like you just have magic duels like it's Harry versus Voldemort or something, instead of, no, they're integrated inside of the unit, keeping the unit intact. And then it kind of just defaults back to a more standard, either late or high medieval style of combat, because that's what it would turn into as long as, you know, meteors aren't raining down from above. The second one is one that he didn't touch on at all, and this is the one that's probably what would happen in 90% of cases as far as fantasy is concerned, so long as the mages aren't, like, you know, truly ridiculous. We're talking the kind that really are just throwing fireballs and some, you know, like they don't go above like 4th level D&D kind of magic, which is a lot of fantasy settings, really. And that is that they would just be artillery. You would just turn them into magical artillery. And the reason they don't invalidate the entire army is simple. Why didn't artillery invalidate infantry? Because artillery cannot take positions. It can clear that hill, it can wipe everything off that hill, it can delete the hill from existence. It can't really get over there in a timely fashion to go take it. Now, could a mage do that? Sure, but the mage wants protection. Yeah, the mage could walk over there, but most mages are still capable of having a knife jammed in between their ribs. So what the mage would be doing is sitting in the back, safe behind everyone else, and kind of operate like, you know, trebuchets do in Medieval 2 Total War, or how a lot of actual mages work in Warhammer Total War 2, where they just wreck the entire opposing army, and the guys in front of them are really just there to keep them safe and not get shot into a billion pieces. And then the mage moves on. This actually can be taken to an extreme in Warhammer Total War 2. You have one-man doomstacks, most of which are mages, because they'll just wipe out an entire army by themselves and keep moving on. There's still garrisons in cities you own, because otherwise you have to leave the Lord there, who's got better things to be doing, like destroying more armies. Honestly, this sort of logic is kind of how the vampire counts in general function in Warhammer Fantasy. They have a whole lot of disposable minions, and the vampires are 90% of the killing power of the army. The guys are just there to be a large bone/meat shield in between other people and the vampires/necromancers. It's basically taking that dynamic and just expanding it to everyone, so long as your mages are of an appropriate power level. Now, of course, if this goes the D&D route, and I think it was Heroes of Battle that covered this, that battles wouldn't look like you'd think if you take into account a D&D style magic system. As in, it's fairly easy to create magical items like scrolls and wands and things, because either you just have a low-level sorcerer or someone who has used magic device in the squad, and they're the person who has 2 or 3 scrolls of fireball and a wand of scorching ray or magic missile. Honestly, probably scorching ray, because that does a lot of damage, and if someone gets hit by that, they are, by all odds, dead. Just by all odds, you get hit by a scorching ray, assuming average damage, pretty much any soldier will just drop dead. And the fireball effectively fills a similar role to a mortar or a grenade launcher, though it operates more like a rocket launcher because it has to go in a straight direction. You can't lob the shot. But you wouldn't have large bricks of people running into each other because you could have tons of units with fireball scrolls, and a big brick of dudes is the perfect target for a fireball scroll, and a whole lot of people die then. So it would probably start looking a little more like World War I. There'd be lots of trench works. There'd be, things blocking line of sight, which screw up line of effect type things. You got a lot of weirdness with how magic operates, so there'd be lots of put things in between you and the enemy, because armor doesn't do much to keep you safe from a fireball or a scorching ray. Now, of course, there's a million ways to handle this. You can, of course, just make it so that there's magical... There's things that counter magic. I mean, you should always have something that counters something, otherwise it's just like, why isn't everyone doing that? This is generally why when you're designing something, you should run it by some other people, because they'll probably notice something you didn't notice, or go, this is really exploitative, you should probably solve this, unless you want it to be exploitative. And then, maybe that's part of the story or something. I'm not sure. That's up to you, depending on what you're doing. But, really, mages are artillery. They're really, really good artillery. Because, yes, they can protect themselves, but you know what's better than them protecting themselves? Them being able to focus entirely on firing big bang attacks over the guys, half a mile away from you, while they're perfectly happy because there's half a dozen men-at-arms standing around them being bored, but keeping them safe from, sneaky people. But that's really all I got. It was some brief thoughts. Nothing too insane. What are your guys' thoughts? Did I miss something? I probably did. Maybe you have examples of magical artillery in fantasy stories, or at least in your D&D games or something. Let me know in the comments below. So remember to like, share, subscribe if you enjoyed this. Peace out, everybody.